a Bible and you want to look at this, open your Bible to John chapter 10. I want to read the passage. Of course, John is considered the Gnostic gospel. I say that often. And what that means when I say that, Gnostic, the Gnostics were a massive group of people which the early church was made up of for the first several hundred years, up until the Nicene Creed. At the Nicene Creed, when Constantine formed what we call the Catholic Church, the Roman Church, same thing, they did everything they could to stop Gnosticism, to stamp out Gnosticism. Gnosticism and the Gospels that were found in 1945 to 1947, they're called the Nag Hammadi, were Gospels that looked at Jesus as an apparition, not a literal person, not a historical character, but a character that represented all of the philosophies from all over the world. And so the story of Christianity, the original story of Christianity, was a story that incorporated all of the mythological characters. They are called God-men characters because they symbolize, through symbol, a character that is a man, but he's a God. And in so doing that, they were symbolizing all of humanity, to say that even though humanity is a man, she is a God. And of course, if we say that, I say, well, I'm a God, people's response, oh, you crazy, or you gone off the deep end, or this, that, and the other. Or then a lot of their response is, well, go to the hospital and empty the hospital since you're God. And again, if you study the story of Jesus in the Gospels, then you will see that Jesus said in his hometown he couldn't do any miracles. Right. So Jesus couldn't go empty the hospital in his hometown. As a matter of fact, Jesus didn't go empty anybody's hospital. A lot of times Jesus would just come and say, hey, it's in you. The power or the ability, it's in you. And so all he would do is encourage people to already exercise what they already have. In society today, and especially in religion, Christian religion, it promises you something in the future, either of bliss or of torment. And that's its bill of goods. That's what it sells. It's something in the future of bliss or torment. It doesn't offer you the truth, even though Jesus himself said that the truth is what sets you free. It's the truth that does it. Christianity offers us a belief system, which we buy. We all buy. I bought it. Bought into it, hook, line, and sinker. And most of us are drenched in that. And what I mean by that is, you can ask anybody. They don't have to go to a church. You can ask anybody, what do you believe? They'll tell you what they believe. They have a belief system. Not knowing that many times that belief system is what binds them up and hinders them from being or seeing or doing the very thing that they're designed to be and do. And that's sad, but that's exactly what happened with the Council of Nicaea in 326, when they formed the belief system of, we would call it the church, and they called it the Creed, the Nicene Creed. And then later, 78 years later, they formed what they call the Apostolic Creed, which both creeds pretty much say the same thing. They just added hell to the creed. In other words, eternal torment. That God will burn you forever and ever because you disobey. And now there is so much research and so much coming forth of ancient material to shoot all that ideology in the foot so that it don't even walk good anymore. And let alone talk good. It doesn't fit. It doesn't fit what's happening. And to me, that's tremendous hope, because it's a great awakening. Because what was sweeping the world, the country, before the Nicene Creed was Gnosticism. What you could call would be true Christianity, where they understood that Christianity referred to the Christos, or the Christ, or the God in you, God in you, And so when I talk about the Gospel of Matthew being Gnostic, it's not any way to make it literal. And when I say make it literal, you can't take the words in it literal. In other words, Jesus said, eat my flesh and drink my blood. If you don't, you have no part with me. You can't take that literal, and everybody knows you can't take that literal, so how you take it? You take it symbolically. And when you take it symbolically and you understand that the bread, if I draw the astrological chart, put the circle up here on the board, put the cardinal cross in here, I put Virgo the Virgin here, directly across from is Pisces, which was the sign that was introduced during the time of the story of Jesus, was Pisces. They had just come out of the sign of Aries, which was the lamb or the ram. That was what the Judaism represented, the lamb or the ram. They come out from the lamb or the ram of Taurus. And you can see that's called the precession of the equinox. It's a backward movement of the energy that's constantly filling the earth with its power and ability. So you go right straight across from Pisces, you have Virgo. Virgo represents bread. It just so happened that it comes in August. That's the time of the harvest of wheat. And so that's a perfect analogy. You come out of Virgo into Libra. Libra is when the grapes are full in the vine and when the wine is made. So you have the bread and the wine. That's the Last Supper that Jesus partook of. It just simply is an astrological motif to explain to us many of the energies of the astrological wheel. I put that on the board in a minute so you can see it. But y'all understand that? And I'm praying that you do. What's missing more in anything that I know of and in any, quote, belief system is a true teaching of who you are, who I am. Most people don't know who they are. Most people just think, well, I'm Lynn Hayes, or you have a resemblance. You like, Kirby's talking about it, see that lady look like Rochelle? Said, well, that's Rochelle. So that's how people associate us. Hardly no one associates, and it's not taught very well, that you are an eternal being, or that you're a timeless being, and that the greatest part of your being is spirit. That's which is divine. So you are a divine being that has a physical body, that we get so lost in our physical body and so drunk on our physical body, all we do is try to feed and nourish our physical body. It's hungry, we want to feed it, it gets tired, we want to lay it down. And we get lost in that, or we want to provide for it, clothe it, shelter it, ride it around, all of those things. But hardly anyone takes time to feed the real person that they are, which is spirit, which is divine, which is the essence of their being. It desires the same, it desires similar things. It desires to rest. How does it get rest? By shutting your mind down. Silence is what the spirit longs for. We don't have time for that. Our society is built to take away that blessing from us. Well, what happens when we don't take time for silence? Well, we're starving our spirit in one essence. Another way that the spirit feeds is on breath, because it is breath. If you look at Genesis 1:2, the spirit brooded. The word spirit is ruach. That's the word for breath, wind. Are there methods to breathe to feast? Absolutely. There are ways that we can breathe. It's like when people get stressed out and go to the hospital, because one of the things they'll tell them is just breathe. And they're saying, I'm breathing. And so methods of breathing, that feeds the spirit. So food feeds the spirit. What kind of food does the spirit long for? Abstinence of natural food. I remember years ago when I first started my Christian walk, I thought, well, if I go without food for 3 days, I'll starve to death and I'll die. And so when Rochelle was a little baby, I went on, or a little girl, she wasn't a baby, she was probably 12, and I was starting to pastor. I went on a 21-day fast, just strict water, and I didn't die. I really didn't bother me, other than I was just hungrier. I got hungry for several days, but after a week or so, the hungry pains left, and then you just, so we have all of these ideologies that keeps us away from the truth of who we are, and we live our lives the same way. That keeps us away from the very things of who we are. And what I say about the Bible, even though there are so many corruptions, and when I say corruption, I mean deletions or additions or twists or mistranslates or not giving the proper meaning for a word, it still has the truth in it if we can extract it. And I say it's still one of the most wonderful books that we have at our availability. And that's my favorite book. So I basically have given all my adult life in the research of it. So that's why I say the things I say and do the things that I do, is I see in it the answer for every situation we face as humans on this beautiful globe. This can be a heaven on earth or a hell on earth. And if you're going to go to anything, anywhere, that's it. And nobody dictates that path to us but us. We walk it by ourselves. We create it by ourselves. As God is creator, we are creator. We create our world. So right here, John 10:10, I want you to read it, look at it with me. Verse 30, it says, I and my Father are one. What Jesus is saying is me and the source of my life, me and the origin of who I really am, are one. He's saying that this is being said and written as an example that I would be able to say the same thing. Because Jesus says also in this same place, in this book, that as I and the Father are one, even so are you and the Father one. That's in this same book right here in John chapter 17. They call it the high priestly prayer of Jesus. And Jesus actually says, Father, show them, all of us, that as you and I are one, you and they are one. It tells you that very clearly. I mean, you don't even have to translate words to get it. It's just simply there. So that's what he's referring to. And then let's read on, verse 31. Then the Jews took up stones again to stone him, just like they do you and me. They stone you not with rocks, but with words. Right? Sticks and stones break my bones, but words can never hurt me is a lie. Words is what destroy us. Words tear us apart. When people get upset and they say things to each other they don't mean because they're mad, and I know none of y'all do that. And those words many times are destructive forces. And sometimes people can't get rid of those words. They play them over and over and over in the back of their mind. Well, you said, you said. Well, I didn't mean it. Then why did you say that? So words are devastating. Words are seeds. Words are seeds. They create. They took up stones to stone him. They took words to throw at him. Verse 32, Jesus said unto them, many good works have I showed you from my Father. For which of these do you stone me? And the Jews answered him, saying, a good work we don't stone you for, but for blasphemy, because you being a man say you're God. Then Jesus answered them, is it not written in your law, I said you are gods? Now here Jesus quotes them Scripture. And of course I want you to, with me, if you'll just go over to Psalms chapter 8. That's where he's quoting from, Psalms chapter 8. If you will, go over there with me and let's look at this. Psalms chapter 8. You know, and again, I asked you the question, how is it possible that you and I can be a God? How is that possible? And of course, when I draw the chart of how my father released his seed, my mother and father were in an experience of love. He released his seed into my mom. In that seed was an element of life and light. And those are the very essence. If it's a spark off of the flame of what God is, because God is light. God is like a fire, burning fire, Hebrews tells us. All of that. Off of that flame come a spark. And that spark was in the seed of my father. When that seed entered the egg in my mother's womb, immediately the spirit/soul began the business of building God a home to live in, which is the physical body. So it doesn't matter who you are, what color your skin, where you live, it doesn't matter any of that. God built you so God could live in you. We ignore that. And then Christianity has sold us this bill of goods where that we are wicked, we're corrupt, we're sinners. You know? Our mom and daddy, our original mom and daddy, they the one that messed us all up. It ain't my fault. I didn't do it. They did it. So now we play the blame game. Isn't that what they teach us?
Yep.
Yeah, well, of course we know that's what they teach us. So
I'm just a victim.
I'm a victim. That's exactly right. I'm only a man. I'm a victim of that. So how is it possible that man and woman is a God? Honestly, scientifically, analogically speaking, it can be very easily proven now scientifically that you are a light being, just exactly like it tells you in Genesis 2:7. It says, God formed man out of the dust. The word dust doesn't mean dirt. It's the Hebrew word afar. And actually the word afar means dust particles of light. It means minute particles of light, L-I-G-H-T. And those particles of light, again, are one of those created me. It's like one of them created you. I don't care who you are, where you're at. So, I mean, again, scientifically proven. No, there's not any argument, shouldn't be any argument from any community about that. God created us, and He created us to be exactly like it is. God, source, energy, whatever name you like to call it, is a creator. So are we. I create my world, you create your world. Period. That's the way it is. So, I want you to look there, Psalms chapter 8, and look at verse 3. It says, when I consider the heavens and the works of your fingers, the moon, the stars, which you have ordained, what is man that you are mindful of him, and the Son of Man that you have visited him? Thou hast made him a little lower than the angels. Now see, that's a King James translation and also a corruption of the original Hebrew, because that word right there, angels, comes from the Hebrew word Elohim. The same identical word Elohim that's used in Genesis 1 and over 2,000 times in the Old Testament for the word God. It's the word Elohim, which actually the word means angles. And I'll show you those angles in just a minute. But the angles were translated for angels. And so just exactly like if you read the book of Enoch, you'll find the 12 angels, and it gives you names of the 12 astrological wheels as the 12 different angles of energy that create you. And that's hard for us to grasp, and I've tried to say this in many different ways, but the energy that's coming from the sun right now, even though the sun is exactly the same distance from the earth as it was this morning, between 6 and 8, the energy that's coming now from the sun is not the same energy that was coming from the sun between 6 and 8, or between 8 and 10. It's a totally different energy. Now you might say, well, how is that? It's by the angle that it comes. And that angle is an energy that creates different things. So, that again is also scientifically proven. So he says, He's made you a little lower than the angels. Let me, I want to read you something that I wrote here just a week or so ago. The central theme of all religion, of all nations, all over the realm that we call the earth, was a fabulous story. It was a myth of a dying and a resurrecting God-man. And that's confusing to us, dying and resurrecting God-man. Both of those words, dying and resurrection, aren't literal. They're symbolic words. They're code words. They're words that have a meaning other than what they sound like they're. In other words, there's not anything dying, and yet we look at everything in nature and say that it's dying. It's decaying, yes. And just like my body, your body is set in a motion of decay. You have birth, growth, and decay. That's the cycle. Everything moves on that cycle. But after decay, you return back to the earth to return back again. And the Eastern religion had it right through reincarnation. It tells you that even in Scripture. John the Baptist was the reincarnation of Elijah. It tells you that. Jesus said, if you can hear this, this is true. So that's an understanding. So resurrection is more or less like an awakening. That's a better term for it than any other term that I can think of. Resurrection is an awakening. It's an awakening to who you are. It should happen to us all the time. In other words, I should constantly awaken to my divinity. The more I awaken to my divinity, the more I empower myself to be a greater me. So I get the benefit of that. That's called resurrection. You know, religion tried to say it's the graves are going to just burst open and physical bodies are going to come up out of there. Sorry, that's not the resurrection. That's not what Scripture refers to when it talks about the resurrection. The dying and resurrecting God-man was a very common myth told in all cultures. And I'm just going to name some of them for you here. It says, a dying and a resurrecting God-man. Yet, for the masses of the majority of Christianity after 326, and that I say in Creed, the central theme of a dying and resurrecting God-man got localized and, I'm sorry, I got a bug in my throat. It got localized and literalized and historicized. It became a history in a single character called Jesus. Yet for thousands and thousands of years, this myth or this story of a dying and resurrecting God-man had been told by all nations all over the earth. This typical figure, in other words, and I'll read you some names, the typical figure, he's a typology. Horus, Bacchus, Dionysus, Osiris, Hercules, as well as Jesus, and many, many, many more. The list should just go on and on. Those are different characters from different countries and nations. And every one of these characters, the same story is around these characters, singular. Some of them tell different aspects about the character, which is you. It's a character talking about you. They show us our own innate divinity and our potential godhood. This divinity or this godhood is to be cultivated. Now here's a part that we don't get. This divinity and this godhood is to be cultivated and developed by each and every individual as a part of our own growth from infancy to maturity. In other words, nobody can develop your godhood but you. Now, that seems like something that everybody should get excited about, to realize, you mean I have control of my godhood? Nobody else does. You do. A preacher don't. A sage or an anointing person that, you know, can touch you and knock you down, they don't. You have the power over yourself, over your own divinity. You have the power to lull it to sleep. How do we do that? We lull it to sleep by living the lifestyles we live. We have the power to keep it dormant so that it's powerless instead of powerful. Nobody can do that but you. That's up to each one of us. Each and every individual as a part of his own growth from infancy to maturity. The term Christ is a Greek designation from the Greek word Christos, which actually means anointing or oil. Comes from the root word kairo, which is a oil. It's an oil. And Paul did not write in Hebrew, but he wrote in Greek. Thus we have the Old Testament, which is the foundation of everything in the New Testament. And in the Hebrew, the glip or holy character, and the New Testament, the glip of the holy character, are different but referring to the same. In the Greek New Testament, the character is Christos, or Christ. Christ is not a designation or a name for Jesus. It's referring to an oil that's in the physical body. The Hebrew Messiah, or comes from the Mashiach, is exactly the same thing. That's just the designation of Hebrew for that oil. That oil's inside you. It's in your very body. It's a part of who you are. The term Christos is not a designation of a personal name, such as Jesus or John or Brian or Danny or anybody else, Mary, Jane, John, or Sue. Nor is it a personal name for Jesus. It is a term like many other names or terms to speak of the human body as God's temple or God's house or God's dwelling place, which is the physical body in the natural world. There are many other Greek terms that we have all heard that are named but do not refer to a literal physical being. And I'm going to list some here. I wrote them down. This is just to touch a few of them. Asclepius, that's a character. Not a literal character, but it was a name. It was a designation, and he was called the god of medicine. That's exactly, this is where medicine come from. It come out of Greek mythology. Asclepius was the god of that. He was the god of medicine. Sirius. Sirius is another designation, and he's referring to the constellation of Taurus for many reasons. Dionysus. He was the god of winemaking. He refers to Libra, the sign of balance. We call it scales, but it's the sign of balance. And the reason that's when they make the grapes over here, because if you get drunk on the grape, the wine, then what do you lose?
Your balance.
Your balance. You walk. It's not good, it's not bad, it's not a sin, it's not a this, it's not a that. You're just out of balance. That's all. And don't we get drunk on a lot of things? See, that's good preaching, Brother Lynn. You're doing a good job. Thank you. So Dionysus, he's the god of winemaking. These are characters that are designations, but not literal characters that live, okay? Then Helios, who was the god of the sun. Hermes. And here's one, Morpheus. Have y'all heard of Morpheus? How many of y'all saw in the movie, The Matrix?
Yeah.
Let me share a scene with you in the movie. That's a documentary on spiritual growth. I mean, it really is. I mean, I don't know who and how that Hollywood put that together. It's one of the most phenomenal movies, especially number one of The Matrix, that you'll ever see. It's a typology of you, which pill you take. And when Morpheus, you remember when Morpheus he's took the pill and he's laying there in that chair and they got that thing in the back of his neck and they hook him to that thing and they're fixing to download it. Y'all remember that? He's going through all. You remember that? You didn't see the movie?
Yes.
Okay. So he's going through all this downloading, and then finally Morpheus says, okay, he's got it. He downloaded all this information. Now he can duck bullets and he can do all this super God stuff. And so they unhooked that thing from the back of his head, and old Morpheus is Neo is kind of shaking his head. You remember that? Neo's shaking his head, and then Neo opened his eyes, and he said, Morpheus, I have a question. And he said, yes. He said, why do my eyes hurt? Do you remember Morpheus' answer? Because you haven't used them. See that? See, we are in the same predicament. We haven't really used our real eyes. One of them we talk about, the pineal gland, opening the third eye, the eye of God. Well, that's exactly what Morpheus' name means in Greek mythology. He's the god of the dream. How many of you know in your dreams, many times your dreams you can do and go and be things that you can't do and go and be in your physical body. But you still do this. Morpheus. Then you have Prometheus. He was the god, Prometheus, he was the god who molded mankind. Zeus. We had a great name. Michelle had a great name named Zeus. Zeus was the god of the sky. Powerful Zeus. And the list just goes on and on and on. So many of these we associate with, but we don't know what they mean. These were all part of these mythologies. So the list of these, there were hundreds of these god-men characters. When we encompass all nations, and all of these characters never refer to a literal historical character. And then we got lost, somehow we got lost in Christianity in 326 with the Nicene Creed, and then something horrible happened at that point in time, and that thing that was horrible that happened was that the Gnostic movement of Christianity got snuffed out, and then the Jesuits and the Catholic Church, the Roman Church, under the leadership of Constantine set out to destroy every bit of literature that was contrary to what they were trying to manipulate and say. So they set about to burn and destroy. That's why they went down and destroyed the Alexandrian library. There was too much information that wouldn't allow them to literalize and historicalize this character. Okay? Even though I have to say this because I know it sounds like Lynn don't believe in a literal Jesus. I am not saying that. I'm just simply saying about the information that's available doesn't show us a literal historical Jesus, because there is no literal information to show us that, okay? There could have been, and that's fine with me if there was. It still don't change the beautiful story if we can embrace the story, because Christianity doesn't embrace the story that the 4 Gospels and about Jesus told. Anyway. Okay, I want to read you something here that Alan Boyd Kuhn wrote. But let me read this here in Psalms again. These angels, comes from the Greek word Elohim. And let me show you how that word works, the word Elohim. Well, I'm not even going to spell it in Hebrew, but I want to do this. If I could draw that thing perfectly straight, that is called a 90-degree angle. A 90-degree angle. Is angle E-L or L-E?
That's angel.
Yeah, you just don't know.
It's the same word. It's the same word. You just put the L-E or the E-L in different places. If you have 4 90-degree angles, 4 times 9 is what?
360.
360 degrees. Okay, well there it is. That's the symbol. That's the most ancient symbol that you can find anywhere. And you take that symbol and you dissect that symbol into 4 sections. Okay? Those 4 sections are the cardinal cross. And the reason that any God-man was crucified on a cross is because every man and woman is crucified on the cross. That cross is the cross of matter. In other words, material form. You and I are manifest materially. The material form seems to be limited. Not only that, the material form is in a system that's filled with contrast. What does that mean? Contrast means there's cold and hot here. There's positive and negative here. Or I could say it this way by the corruption of the King James Bible, there's good and evil here. So that puts me at the mercy of those. How many of you have recognized you can't control the cold and the hot? You ever notice that? So what do you have to do so that the cold or the hot don't bother you? You either put clothes on or take clothes off, right? Or create air conditioning or fans or whatever, so that you have the power to control that, but you don't have the power to control whether it's hot or cold, right? So you don't have the power to control whether it's good or evil, right? So can you expose yourself to both? Well, if I said good was positive and I said evil was negative, and that's all, it's just a negative energy, you can't do anything about it. It just simply is there. But that's a real bad way to explain that word good and evil. We would try to say it like good and bad. There are bad things that happen, and there are evil things that happen, and there are wrong things that happen. All of that's true, and we are exposed to all of that. What also is as true is that you have the ability to determine the results of either of those. But you live in them. You live in a negative, grounded world. And that's not bad. It just simply is. So those angles produce the circle. And these 4 90-degree angles are listed in all mythologies. Every one of them. These 4 90-degree angles represents, this one represents the morning. This one represents the afternoon. This one represents the evening. And this one represents the night. Okay? This one also represents spring. So morning, this is a daily cycle. Age, it's the daily. I can break it down to a minute. I can break it down to a second. But it's daily or it's yearly. And spring, summer, fall, and winter. And everybody knows, I mean, there's not any question, you know that March the 21st is the first day of spring, and from March the 21st until April the 20th, no matter what you think or how you look at it, that period of time has a certain energy that it does certain things to the earth. In other words, the flowers and the earth doesn't start to begin to look alive until that period of time, right? Well, it does the same thing in the morning. How many of you have ever seen sunflowers and what they do in the evening? If you ever noticed, they just bow their head. And then what do they do in the morning? Now, why over here in the evening do they bow their head? Would you think the energy that the sun is doing on the earth is different than it is in the morning when they're popping their head back up?
Are you talking about morning glories?
No, I'm talking about sunflowers.
Oh,
The big old sunflowers. We love sunflower seeds. I remember there used to be a big old field over here at the foot of Fort Mountain at the lower end years and years ago when I used to go water skiing back in my wild drinking days. And there was a huge field, probably a 50 to 100 acre field, and that guy grew sunflower seeds because he sold the seeds out of it. He grew sunflowers. And in the morning when that field, I mean those beautiful flowers, those yellow flowers were just popped up there and just shining. And then in the evening, you can come back from going to the lake in the evening, and those things, their heads are bowed. It's a phenomenal. If you see a field that's big and see that happening, I mean, it catches your eye. It catches your eye. All I'm trying to say is this astrological motif of this wheel gives different energies at different point in times. So in the morning, if my spirit is asking me to set aside 5 minutes, 20 minutes, or whatever, to give to the energy of God, the sun, in other words, to let God feed me, to energize me, and I don't have time to do that, what would I receive from it? Nothing. But if I had time to do that, if I took time to do that, could I receive something from it? Yes, that's yes. There's no question about it. You could receive power and energy. So he said, "For you have." Well, I'm over here in Psalms 8 again, and this says you can go to Psalms 139. There's quite a few places that this says that God has made man from lower or just under itself. It's like God is a great big G, we are a little g, but we are a chip off the old block. As God is, I am. I have that ability. Every one of us have that ability. For you have made, verse 5, for you have made him a little lower than the angels, it should be God's, and you have crowned him with glory and honor and made him to have what? Made him to have dominion. Now, we use that word dominion as power, and that's exactly what the Hebrew word actually means right here. So God made you and me to have power. Power over what? You have power over your world. You have power over what's going on around you. And if we would sometimes just get sick and tired of being sick and tired and make some quality decisions, say, well, bless God, by the grace of God that's in me and the power of the Spirit that empowers me, I'm going to, and then you fill in the blank. I'm going to da-da-da-da-da-da. Now, when you do that, do you think that everything's going to just be hunky-dory, and that's a southern term, by the way.
I heard it, I knew it too. We did it in the north also.
Oh, good, okay, so everything ain't going to necessarily just be hunky-dory. Our bed of roses, or a bed of sunflower seeds. There will be good and evil. There'll be tests and trials. There'll be things that come. That's not wrong. That's not bad. That don't mean, oh, well, I blew it. I sinned, so God's not doing it. God's not. No, it doesn't mean any of those things whatsoever. It just simply means you're actually walking the path of life. And I want you to see that. It's the path that you walk yourself. It's your journey and your journey alone. No one else is there. No one else can make you. I mean, I tried to make my kids. I used to thought, well, I can make my grandkids, and then I kind of finally I threw my hands up and I said, you know what? I realized I can't make nobody do nothing. Tried to make my wife do it, and nobody would do what I tried to make them do. I think, what's wrong with y'all? I finally realized, after all these years of pastoring, I finally realized, you know what? There can't nobody make nobody do nothing. You're going to do it or you're not going to do it. Did you have
No, there's a fly there.
Oh, okay, well, kill him.
He's not gonna.
You have power over it.
Yes, I do.
All right, go with me real quickly to the book of Job. You're just a page or two from it. Just turn backwards there, 5 or 6 pages. Job chapter 38. I want you to see something Job said right here. Job chapter 38. Verse 31, it says, can you bind the sweet influence of the Pleiades? The Pleiades are the seven stars. I think 6 of them. Matter of fact, the Pleiades is the symbol for Subaru. Did y'all know that? The Subaru car. Mm-hmm. The Subaru car, if you look at that little, it has this on it, but it's more or less in an oval shape, and then it has 6 stars in it, because the 7th one's unseen, you can't see it with the eye. So it's there. And that's the symbol for the Subaru. They say, if you'll drive a Subaru, you'll own a Subaru, or something.
Good.
That would be calling you a new commercial.
My response to that will be, no, it's not true. If you'll drive a Lincoln, you'll own a Lincoln. That's why they make 100 different kinds. Everybody's got their own seat, and there you go. Everybody's got their own choices. Can you bind the sweet influence of the Pleiades? Now, do you see that? Is there anything you can do to make the influence of the Pleiadian configuration of stars change towards yourself? Nothing. Why? Because that configuration of stars is constantly sending forth energy. It's constantly sending forth a certain kind of energy. Now, I am of the opinion that we can get ourselves tuned through a lot of discipline to where we can actually sense these energies, even to the point, maybe feel these energies. And I'm at the, you could say, well, that's a belief. I'm of the idea. I'm not really building a belief out of it because I don't want to limit myself in a box, but I'm of the idea and opinion that we can do that we can, I know good and well you can feel the influence of the sun, can't you? You go right out there and lay in it for just a few minutes. The problem of it is we are being influenced even in this building by the sun, but the building seems to block off the feeling of energy. It's still here, right? Yeah, it is. Penetrates walls. But you can go out there, you can really feel it. You can say, oh man, I feel the heat of it. Now watch what it says right here. Can you bind this sweet influence? Or can you loose the bands of Orion? Can you bring forth the Mazzaroth in its season? The Mazzaroth is a Hebrew word. That is a Hebrew word which actually means the astrological wheel. It actually means the 12 signs of the zodiac. You know, I say this statement, any place, any page in the Bible where it mentions God, Father, whatever term you'd like to call it, It's actually referring to Elohim, and Elohim in Hebrew actually means the astrological wheel, or the 12 gods, or the 12 powered source. That's what it's referring to. But when you hear the Hebrew word just El, E-L, it's only referring to one section of that power. So it's called power, El, God, singular. Elohim, plural, means many, 12. Can you bring forth the Mazzaroth in its season? The word Mazzaroth is a really beautiful word in Hebrew, and it comes from the root word Nazar. The word Nazar is the root for the word Nazareth. But a Nazar was someone who had consecrated himself, herself, to a path, and that path was of enlightenment. So someone who consecrated himself or herself to this path of enlightenment was called a Nazar. That's why they come up with the term Jesus was born in Nazareth. There was no city, Nazareth, 2,000 years ago. It didn't exist. Hello. But the mythology of the story, him being a Nazarite, was that he was of the order of the Nazars. The word Nazarite, the city Nazarite, is not found in the Old Testament, period. Not anywhere. You won't even find the word at all in the Old Testament. You will find the word Nazar, which actually means one consecrated on the path of awakening. Well, right here's the path, folks. This is the path, the journey right here, the astrological wheel. You work yourself around this wheel. You can do it on a daily, a weekly, a monthly, a yearly basis, or whatever. It's you walking your path. We aren't consecrated to a path. Well, you know what you could say this day and age? You could say, well, it's my goal. And how many of you have a goal? You should. Everybody should have a goal or many goals. Goals are points in my life that I want to reach, places I want to go, right? Don't everybody set them?
Yep.
Yes, of course. What are you doing? You're consecrating yourself to a path. Well, a Nazar, which that's where we get the word Nazaroth, which comes from the word Mazzaroth. One who's consecrated to the path. It's one who has dedicated himself to walk the path. Our parents, I was guilty. My parents were guilty. My grandparents were guilty. Our parents taught us in Christendom that every one of us blew it and become sinners. And I guess that was probably when we were reaching our adolescence, and especially for the boys. I'm not sure for the girls what time that happened for them, but for the boys, that's when they become very mischievous. They're trying to find their manhood. Isn't that true? And so as a result of all that, they're sinners, bless God, and they're hellbound. Isn't that amazing? Just because a boy is beginning to feel his maleness, he becomes a sinner automatically? What if he's not exposed to things that we would call evil and ill? Well, according to Catholicism, it doesn't matter, because when he reaches that age, and he all of a sudden he starts growing pubic hair, and he starts having other things happen to him, well, bless God, he's going to split hell wide open now just because he's reached that age. Isn't that what they taught us? Yeah, they did. They filled our brains full of that stuff. And that's not true. There's none of that true at all. Which brings me to this. I want to read this to you. This is a little book by Alvin Boyd Kuhn. And it's a powerful little book. The name of this book is Easter, the Birthday of the Gods. And he has a place in here talking about when that happened in my life, when I was a young boy, 10, 12-year-old, and I reached that age. Now, generally a mama don't look at their little boys like that, even when they get to be 18 and 20 and 21 and the judge says you're going to prison. That's still mama's boy. Mom still loves him. She didn't agree with what he did. She don't like what he did. But a mama has the kind of love God has. You understand what kind that is, don't you? It's called unconditional. What does that mean? It doesn't have conditions attached to it. So just because you blow it don't mean Mama don't love you. God, the same thing's true with God. All this other religious stuff that we have been taught to believe is a damnation of our being. It's what weighs us. It's a noose around our neck. For that which died on the cross, this is Alan Boyd Coon, page 28 in this little book. For that which died on the cross of matter was no single individual man. This is the cross of matter. To die on the cross means to be in your mortality. So every one of you have died on this cross of matter because you become mortal, subject to mortality, subject to heat and cold. For that which died on the cross of matter was no single individual man, but the divine nucleus of soul apportioned out among all mankind. It was sent forth by the Heavenly Father to be the spiritual grain of wheat planted in the ground of human flesh, therein to lie long in inertness and death until resurrected by the rebirth of its dormant powers in the springtime turn of the cycle. Kuhn is using symbolic language just to simply say the turn of the cycle would be at the point of your awakening. Like for me in my life, the point of my major awakening and turning happened to me when I was about 25 or 26. And tragedies had happened in my life, and at that point I thought, I can't keep going this way. I'm not only going to kill myself, I'm going to hurt people around me, and I may be incarcerated, and I don't necessarily want that. So what happened? At that point of pressure, you know what happened? I got saved. That's what religion told me. I got saved. From what? I don't know. But I got from the devil. Yeah, that's what they do. I got saved from the devil. But really, that's when the turn of the cycle comes. Everybody experiences that on again, this cycle can be daily, this cycle can be yearly, this cycle can be monthly. But we experience it all the time at the turn of the cycle. This distortion of the message of the Good Friday and the Easter rituals into the commemoration of the crucifixion and resurrection of one human body has destroyed, as Jung, he's talking about Carl Jung, the psychologist, as Carl Jung so forthrightly insisted, the enlightening and impelling power of the dramatized reality. And then I wrote a note here under this. I put spirit slash soul, both are eternal yet have very different functions. This is mostly not understood. Most people in Christianity will say soul when they mean spirit, and will say spirit when they mean soul, not knowing there is any difference. They think they're the same thing. They're not. Spirit is ruach, soul is nafesh. Okay? They're different. Car is car, tractor is tractor. If you want to put your car in the field and hook a plow behind it, you have some issues. And I can help you. If you want to get in your tractor and go on vacation to Florida, you have another issue. And I can help you. Soul is not spirit. Spirit is not soul. But they are so closely linked, they have different functions. Okay? Spirit symbolizes power. It cannot be contaminated. It cannot be delinquished. It's power, all powerful, all the time. However, it's so attached itself to soul. Soul is so linked to spirit that soul can be perverted even to the point of going to sleep, even to the point of getting involved in what you can egoically on a negative scale. Soul just get right in there with you. Why is that so? Because soul and our spirit have no biases. They don't depart from you because you decide you're going to rob a bank. They don't leave you because you want to kill somebody or rape somebody. They are right there. Soul will experience it with you, as you. But the soul is ever ready, just exactly, it's ever ready to awaken to its original state of being. Its original state of being is to follow the path to awakening, to follow the path to power, to being the God that you have always been designed to be.
Hallelujah.
This is mostly misunderstood by most everybody that I know, Christians and people who are awakened and whatever. The Spirit is all powerful and timeless, but it can be in time. Do you get it? The Spirit is timeless, but it can be in time. How is it in time? It's in time because of its connection to soul. When it comes into the physical body, the Spirit is not judgmental, but it's merciful. God, I don't know why we can't. Well, we can here. You know, like I said, you know, this is a very easy place for me to release the things that I've spent 40-something years depositing. There's not any drag here. There's not somebody sitting here saying, well, I don't believe that. There's not someone sitting here trying to say, well, that's a lie. You know, if I was down at First Baptist Church, I would have to be pulling a hard plow. You know? They'd be not on the throw
With your
stone.
car.
Yeah, I'll tell you, they'd be ready to shoot me and kill me. I'll be killed now, you know. And that's why the beauty of this, the beauty of this, it does not matter because there's hundreds and hundreds of people here. There are hundreds and hundreds of people potentially here because there's a release of the truth in a place like this where we've labored and we have come to the place where we have prepared the field so the field is rich. Hallelujah. I hope y'all can get it. I know y'all can get it. It's all powerful. It's timeless, yet it can be in time. The Spirit is non-judgmental. It's merciful and filled with grace. Filled with goodness, and it's overflowing with love, the kind of love. So that's that. I need to finish up. Let me. I had too much to read. Good gracious. Let me just finish by reading this. This is another book by Alan Boyd Kuhn, and it comes in many different covers. It's called A Rebirth for Christianity. This was the book that he did the year before he passed. I think he was 84 when he passed, 84, 85. And he finished this book, and I call this his magnum opus. It's not a hard read, it's an easy read. The name of it is A Rebirth for Christianity. And so it proves that Alan Boyd Kuhn, in all of his writings, which are extensive, and his one book called The Lost Light was written by the professor of historical studies for the University of Ohio, and this is recorded. You can actually find this on record. The professor of the Ohio State University said that The Lost Light by Alvin Boyd Kuhn was a book of about 500 or 600 pages, is the best piece of literary work ever put in the English language. Nothing else to compare it with. It's that phenomenal. But it's a massive book. It's an encyclopedia of its own. So this is an easier read. This book right here, I think everybody should have it. It's A Rebirth for Christianity. What he's saying is we need to bring the truth that empowered people instead of the lie of beliefs and dogma that disempower people, that make people weak. Okay, let me, what do I want to read here? True philosophy is more than intellectual, rational connotation. It is beyond that. The complete erudition of consciousness with the perception of truth and beauty and the benefits of all things in harmony. That's what true philosophy is. He goes on and he says, Christian origins are shrouded in a cloud of obscurity. There is not only a lack of basic historical data, but early Christian literature was not at all motivated to strict historical accuracy. A fanatical zeal for the propagation of the faith, F-A-I-T-H, seemed to the scribes sufficient warrant for the production of a great quantity of literature of such doubtful authenticity that to it has been attached the designation of pseudepigraphum. And a pseudepigraphum is false writings. That's the term that's given to most ancient. Like for instance, when I studied Date to get my seminary degree and equal to the seminary degree, I studied this pidographic material by Irenaeus, material by Augustine, the City of God, Augustine. Irenaeus, who is called the church father. And they said that hardly anything Irenaeus wrote can be validated as truth. It was falsifying information. It was constantly falsifying information. A fanatical zeal for the propagation of the faith seemed, well, I've done read that, let me go on. So many historians stress the fact that the Near East was full of the coming of the Messiah at the time when Christianity arose. Apocryphic prophecies abounded, the stage was set, the psychological atmosphere tense with expectancy. However, we shall never know precisely what influences, trends, forces, or pressures came to a balance at that unique point in history, uniting to give the new movement its specific form, character, and content. But one recognition now taking shape after centuries is that virtually every commonly accepted notion about the series of events that supposedly brought Christianity into being is no longer tenable. The tradition that had ruled Christendom is that while other religions were products of human origin, Christianity was ordained by God, who once and only once sent His only Son to institute this true and final code of faith, belief, and conduct for all mankind. Perhaps it cannot be said that this is now widely questioned. Nevertheless, many thoughtful people are now attempting a reinterpretation of the long-cherished legend. Tradition held that if the Christian movement was not instituted by God Himself, it was the work of men completely under divine supervision and inspired by the divine mind and will. Yet, okay, sounds good so far. Yet the evidence points to the conclusion that Christianity came into being when and because both the Judaic and the Hellenistic world had sunk from the exalted peaks attained for 4 centuries earlier to a state of philosophical emptiness. If it is not true that Christianity was born out of that darkness, it can truly be said that it was born when that darkness was its densest. Christianity has never ceased. Listen to this. I'll quit. Christianity has never ceased to claim that it was the supreme revelation of true light to the world, decreed by God to end the reign of benign paganism. Yet, if it was that transient light, history itself poses a natural question. Why was that light of pagan ignorance prolonged into the Dark Ages that held Europe in twilight for a millennium and a half, in other words, 1,500 years, during which Christianity was the ruler of the Europeans' mind? If it was what it promised to be, then why for 1,500 years did it cause more chaos, more killing, more destruction of humankind than any other movement ever known to the face of the earth? And still does. Still creates more war. The logic of events and the development of history even suggests that the Christian religion must itself have generated much of the darkness that covered the land it dominated. Christianity must accept the challenge that, having the light of divine truth, it failed to let that light shine forth upon the Europeans for 1,500 years. That's a powerful indictment. But history, look at it. It's very evident and it's very clear. So I'm thinking that what we are in right now is another renaissance. We are in an awakening. We're in a point in time where we can find what true Christianity was all about. And it was about empowering you to be a greater you. Amen. I quit right there.